Hi, Rob. How are you?
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you too. I know that in Romania, I think it's in the evening, and
Yes.
here it's the morning. You already finished your day, but for us, it's just starting. So I want to introduce you to our audience and tell how much you achieved in such an important time. So as a marketer, Rob understands the importance of brand strategy, organic acquisition, and is a top-ranked Google search engine optimization expert. Rob's true passion is in mentorship, and he's a mentor for top-tier California universities and venture accelerators, as well as his own startup incubator program. So you have lots of things in your basket. You're kind of a multitask person. I'm so happy and so thrilled to have you today.
Thank you.
Thank you. So would you mind if I just straight go to the questions and give it a fresh start?
Yes, absolutely. Jump to the meat.
All right. So how do you see SEO evolving in 2020?
Good question. I think there's, that's always the question, especially around this time of year, is what's happening next year. And I think, the short answer is more of the same, right? I do think that we have to continue to adapt as SEOs to new technologies. But, when we look at the overall, like where we've evolved from, right? Because I've been in the space for, I don't know, I can't even count the years now, but it's been a minute or two. And, there's been some big changes some years, and other years it kind of just feels like, more nuances have happened in that year. I'd say the easiest way to kind of look at it is, if we keep optimizing for humans, right, we're aligning with what Google's trying to do, right? Google's whole thing is they're looking to make a better user experience so they can keep people on their site, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think we can understand that our interests are aligned, and if we understand that, then we won't really be too behind in the power curve. So all I would say with that, it would be continue to think about the user, continue to think through really all the smaller factors. Is kind of, a lot of times we kind of think of the main factors. And I think for me anyways, my strategy for next year is just to continue to look at all of the factors that my competitors are maybe overlooking, and continue to just be holistic, continue to think about the user, and then also thinking about what new technologies are out there. So, how does, as an example, audio, social networks like Clubhouse, right? How do those factor into things? Thinking about when other platforms become indexable, right? So, whether it becomes a TikTok or whatever it would be, when they become indexable, then thinking about how do I understand that as part of my strategy. I think for me, search engine optimization isn't always just about, our website content. I think about it as, what does our our search engine results page presence look like as a whole? So whether that's YouTube, whether that's, third-party blogs, any of that. And I think that's, for me, my strategy for 2022 is holistic, understanding where my customer is and how I can serve them in an authentic way, making my information machine readable.
Yeah, well, actually, what you talked about just brings up more questions in my mind, because even though it's a very succinct and very precise answer, I have one question. What is your approach, or what is your understanding about holistic SEO? Because it's a great term, and it's hard to understand for so many people, because it seems like SEO is SEO, but SEO is a keyword, that's true, but that keyword just contains a large sphere of things. So
great question. I think this is one that we answer a lot in Clubhouse, right?
Exactly.
You've probably heard this answer before, but for the sake of your audience,
doesn't really matter. We really need to, spread the word. So go ahead.
Yeah. So, I think the way to start off is, what is SEO? And a lot of times people think, well, if they come in from a copywriting background, SEO is content, and content is king. If they come in from maybe a technical background, right, web designer, anything like this, then technical SEO is where it's at, and you've got to focus on the technical SEO and page speed optimization and things like this. If you come maybe from a PR perspective, right, maybe it's getting more press releases, getting more articles, more mentions, ultimately more links, right? And so those kind of have been, it's interesting. Maybe if you're a user interface designer, right, it's all about behavior, right? So as you get the idea, right, it's like wherever you come in from, whatever your expertise is, that's typically the lens you're looking through, and it's really what oftentimes you're identifying as what SEO is. So what that leaves is a lot of times gaps in strategies, right? Like what you'll see is if, as an example, if you are going with one SEO provider and they're really strong in content, right? And all they do is create blog posts all the time, but then maybe they're not sharing them out, right? They don't have that content flight path. Ultimately, you may get really lopsided, and maybe your indexation isn't there to support the amount of content that you have, right? Versus on the other side, maybe if you come in from a web design perspective, it's like, hey, this thing is so fast, it's, no errors, GSC, my Google Search Console is like, squeaky clean, but maybe we don't have a lot of focus on, the content, or focus on, the authority building. So I think what for me is, again, holistic. It's like the question you asked is, I use the analogy of going to the gym, right? You want to like work all of your muscles out, not just, one or two. Yeah. And so, what that does is it's about really kind of setting a perspective, I guess, that says, hey, just because that's what content's what doesn't mean that's all that exists. And as from a client perspective, they'll hear something like content's king, and then they'll say, I got to go create blog posts, right? Yeah. And so what I love to kind of speak to is thinking about the big picture and thinking about holistic. And so I kind of created my own framework for how to look at a holistic, how to look holistic as SEO. And one of the first things that I point out is that SEO crosses a lot of boundaries, right? SEO back in the day was very contained. It was kind of like how we have email marketing, and there was SEO. But today SEO is really ingrained because Google's looking at the search experience. They're looking at so many human factors that naturally SEO has to then take into account all those human factors. And so when I think about like, what is SEO to me, especially from like, what is holistic SEO, it's so much about, I guess, what you'd consider like omni-channel, I guess, in the past, but I look at it like, what are the different areas that it touches? And so the framework that I put together was the ABCDs of marketing, which is essentially the ABCDs of SEO, starting with the audience first, B, moving into brand. We actually did a Clubhouse room last week. Yes. All about the brand elements, which was really, I loved your insight on that as well. And I love kind of this concept of like thinking about, how our business, aspects, into SEO. Then moving into C is content, right? D is design, thinking about user experience, right? And the next D, kind of working backwards now, would be development. And this is going to be the technical errors, right? Moving backwards, community, that's your next kind of C. And in this instance, it's about, am I actually, creating content that people want to share? Is this actually getting pushed out through different, different other sites offsite, and then kind of B would be kind of your build or buy, I call it, kind of like your competitor notifications, all the actual stuff that we think like true SEO would be, right, outside of other forums. It's kind of like the stuff we're just there to, optimize and manipulate, I guess, whatever you want to call it, search engines, right? That's that one quadrant. Yeah. That's all the stuff that we're, it's just about links mostly, not really focusing on the human side. And then ultimately the final A would be looking at the analytics, right? So that's, how does Google like my site? How do the users like my site? And ultimately optimizing for humans, optimizing for robots. So anyway, that's maybe my long-winded answer on, what is holistic marketing SEO for me, but it definitely touches a lot of different areas.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. I mean, SEO is now corresponding to the business entity, how you are, who you are, let's say, as a person, and who you are as a business. It's the only way to really express fully to your audience, as you just mentioned, all the ABCDAs of marketing. And now marketing at the same time contains SEO and also marketing contained by business entity. So when you do marketing at the same time, you need to work on all the aspects of business. And I think this is going to evolve, this type of understanding, because you are not different than from your employees. You're not different than your executives or all the stakeholders, all the customers. And now the business entity actually contains everything. So when we look at who we are and how we present ourselves on the web, it's very important to contain this all parts of the equation or puzzle. And that's why I love your context about how to call ABCDAs or all the actors or elements in marketing. That's huge.
You brought up an interesting point there, and I like your point about the business side of this, right? Like SEO, a lot of times from a practitioner standpoint is, let's get rankings, right? Yeah. But that's this idea of like, focusing on activity. But when as an SEO, like to your point exactly, if we focus on the business elements, then it becomes outcome. And that's one of the, I always train my mentees is, don't focus on activity, focus on outcome, right? Be profit oriented and thinking through ultimately, does this, this activity serve a business function, right? And really thinking more than just the rankings, thinking about, am I getting the right rankings? Am I getting the right traffic? Is that traffic converting? And even going down to understanding, which traffic sources are actually converting best, looking more into the conversion optimization. So I love the concept of, thinking past the activity and into the outcome.
Oh, definitely. When you say what kind of traffic I'm receiving and what kind of traffic is really valuable, or I try to reach out, that's the most important thing. Sometimes only looking at data is not helping to us, because on data, it seems like it's great. We are receiving a lot of traffic, but if you don't convert it into sales or leads or what is your cost, it doesn't mean anything. So that's why we really need to have, it's another proof that we need holistic approach, because only we understand our customers, who are audiences, then we could understand the value of traffic, which is good or not really functioning for us. So that's I think in 2020, it will be more spoken and more outlined. And I really like this. For so many years, almost, I started my business with my husband in 1997, and kind of we see all the trajectory and ups and downs of marketing and search engine optimization. Back in the days, it's all about keywords. Everybody just, meta keywords, and everybody creating gibberish content, by syndicating from different sources. There are a lot of tools out there. Everybody was on that bandwagon, and then suddenly Google understands that it's not working, and then and then they started the algorithm change. And we have been since then having countless algorithm changes, other than the core ones. We have also daily algorithm changes, which are tiny little changes that we do not really realize, but it's done on the part of Google. So what do you think about Google? I mean, are they doing a good job? Or what's your thought about that?
Well, I mean, that's a loaded question.
Sorry to ask.
No, it's stuff. I mean, it's good. I mean, I think, when you look at who Siegfried, I forget, Siggy, anyway, and Larry, what their,
Oh yeah, sorry.
Sergey,
Yeah.
I forget his name. Anyways, but when you actually look at kind of their history and the do no evil, I actually candidly think they actually believed that. And I think they were not really, I think they were just really, technophile. I think they love what they were building.
Yeah.
I don't know that they completely understood where it was going initially. And, I think under the different management that they've had, it's kind of taken things in a different direction. I think Google is ultimately evil at this point. But, when you look at, anyways, that's a completely different topic.
Oh, sorry. I don't.
No, it's good. I think we're looking at Alphabet as a whole. Anytime, we move to that stage of Alphabet or Meta, right? That it's pretty much the company's is in the evil stage. No, okay. But from a search user perspective, I like the sense that we continue to move towards, is this good for the user? Because what that, it's when we understand as SEOs that we are ultimately out to, let's just be realistic, manipulate or pander to the results, the algorithm, right? And so when the algorithm says we need more links, we just go put more links. So the algorithm says we need more content, we go put more content. And the problem with that is that we end up having two customers.
Yeah.
So I love the idea where Google's really trying to align around, is it a good user experience? Are they actually engaging with this content? Are they coming back to this site? Are they sharing? Like looking at things like extra factors to hopefully incentivize us to say, okay, let's stop, trying to optimize for Google and let's actually just optimize for humans. We're not 100% there yet. I think the nice thing is that we're maybe 60% there, maybe, right? And so that's nice that we can say, hey, more of our time is focused on humans than robots. But once you get in that competitive position, so that's again a little bit of a rant and a tangent. But I think ultimately it's been interesting to see how Google's been trying to pull, keep users on site, right? So that's kind of the knowledge graph, all of the ways that they're actually answering questions on site. And we've seen some examples of how they put some sites out of business, right? Because they answering the question for them. But I guess that's free market capitalism to a degree, but then again, they're a monopoly for the most part, because Bing doesn't exist, right? Like Yahoo doesn't exist. So, sorry,
Yeah.
I think I could keep going on that one, but
definitely, there's no right and wrong or black and white for this kind of question. So I really understand it. But my point is, even though we are not in favor of it so many times in terms of Google, and they're certainly at a level of really that we don't want to touch because it's like devolution, all that stuff. But at the same time, they are trying to do good, especially they just wanted to create an experience realm where the customers are the users and the users need better content. So finally, they try to serve for better content. Of course, there are still lots of problems. And not, top 10 ranked websites always really what Google envisions. But let's hope for the best. They will, catch up all the bad players in the market and allow a place for people. Oh my God, we have a visitor. Oh my God, what is his or her name?
This is Bandy.
Bandy.
He's a sweetheart.
He's
sweet.
okay.
We'll get him after the interview. Otherwise,
Yeah. Oh, no worries.
Or something.
I love cats, so I have a cat. I understand. That's their kingdom. Don't. So yeah, it's because when user-centric solutions are the best, because what we are trying to do as marketers, trying to understand the pain points of our customers, and what Google needs to do is understand the pain points of us, web user, and in that sense, that's just important. And I support it, and I hope it will end with good outcomes. And let's put a point. So I will go and ask you, what are some ways to be a more effective as an SEO practitioner?
Great question. I think one of the first things is always be learning, right? And I kind of have a few kind of key points that I recommend to my mentees, but it's always be learning is one of the first, right? And that's that concept that in the SEO space, it is always evolving, right? Because we are responding to algorithm changes, responding to new platforms, new requirements. So I think like that's a healthy thing, which I love about our weekly rooms that we do on Clubhouse, where we're kind of like able to learn from each other. I think peer mentorship is important. So I'd say always, having that curiosity mindset, wanting to actually do tests yourself and find out things yourself is a great start. I think the next one is what we touched on earlier is profit orientation, right? Really thinking through, is this just something I'm doing to do, or is there a measurable outcome? And what is the key performance indicator that I'm trying to move the needle on? Yeah. And does that impact a business result or not? I think that's what's going to make when you can, similarly, I guess, when you can, speak to an executive or a client in their language, you're going to be much better received, right? Because ultimately they don't care about all the technical stuff you're talking about. They just want results, right? And so when you come in and you're talking about features and they want to hear benefits, ultimately there's a disconnect. And so they either just trust you or they go and talk to somebody else that actually can explain it in a simple way. I think the next piece is going to be, data-backed decisions, right? And not just kind of having this idea that I'm going to, do the same thing. I'm going to do a routine. Routines don't work for SEO, right? You can't just be like, okay, every week I'm going to create another blog post. It doesn't work like that, right? So it's this idea of like, constantly be auditing, saying, okay, what does the site need right now? Like, is there changes in the search engine results page? Are there new snippets for this query that I didn't have, last week that maybe I can, let's just say, optimize my content for a way to align with that, that snippet or whatever it would be. So I think kind of, being nimble, always learning, profit orientation, data-backed decisions. I think those are some kind of, key areas. But really thinking like a business person, not just a techie, I think is something that one, helps you prioritize, and two, helps you communicate with your customer in a way that they actually can understand the value that you're likely giving them, even if they don't realize it, so to speak. So.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you. I have a little addition. It's just a learning curve, as you say, and you have to keep up with it. And you love to learn, because if you just want to have a stable job or do routine things, it's not that kind of character. It's just, you really need to learn and love to learn and thrill to learn, so that you can bring creative solutions. Once you learn something ahead of other people, or notice or realize that, hey, this will go on to that point, then you can create your strategy, and then you can help your clients in a better way. One thing that I really love to do is just listen to different podcasts and learning their point of view. Every time I found, oh, this is great. Oh, I have to read more about this. And then it just, creates a world around me, which I enjoy because I love learning. And next morning, I have another reason to get up and to learn something new. I love that approach. And for an SEO practitioner, that's a must, actually.
Absolutely. I really like how the idea of the blind spots, right? Knowing that we have blind spots, knowing that we need to continue to, figure out what those are, and whether it's technical, whether it's, with the clients, whatever it would be. So kind of going back to the idea of always learning and, going into things with an open mind, knowing that there's something that you there's always something that we can improve on, always something we can learn. So great addition. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I can't believe myself, when I started without knowing anything, because I was an economist and I was working in a bank. Then I just, quit my job, and with my husband, we just started a web design business, and we created Turkey's first English search engine and travel guides and cultural guides. And we just taught ourselves. And nobody told me, hey, you can do it in that way. No, we just taught ourselves, just hustle and learn. And I'm still in the same stage. It did not change.
Lifetime learners. Yep, that's us.
Yeah, it's just, it's all the same. At least this is written, learning is written, but learning brings more learning and more blind spots. And that's the beauty of it, I guess. So I have a really good question for you. What are some overlooked SEO factors?
Oh, good one. Kind of, we talked about the big three, content, technical and links, obviously kind of the main three. But yeah, I definitely think, really getting in and understanding your audience again, going back to the framework, the ABCD framework,
Yeah.
right? Really understanding your audience and thinking about, more than, getting behind, we talk about search intent a lot, right?
Yeah.
But thinking more about that, like thinking through, yes, there's search demand that I want to fulfill, right? There's existing search demand that I want to understand, and we know all that, but then also thinking about generating demand. And this is something that you don't normally get into until later on, but that's about the branding. It's about, creating momentum around concepts, around solutions. And, I love, and that kind of moves into the next one, the B, right? I love this concept of, always pushing to build your branded search. Your brand is, brand is, search traffic, right? And looking at kind of competing those against each other, and filtering that out. I always filter my brand search traffic out. I don't really consider it SEO truly, but there's a piece there, and understanding what type of business that you are. If you're an international business, knowing that, hey, there's a lot you got to be thinking about internationalization for language, and for the type of domains that you're choosing, and multi-domain strategy or single domain strategy, and multiple locale strategies, things like this. I think if you're local, then it's all about that Google My Business concept, right? Thinking about how can I really penetrate on the map pack side. I think in content, one of the things we think about is always, let's put content up, but then we don't think about, let's market that content. And so having a content flight path, and we hear this so many times in our weekly room of people coming and say, okay, I just keep building more and more content. And I'm saying, well, what do you do when it's up? Well, I move to the next piece, right? And it's like, well, when the content has been created, and deployed to the website, that's just the start, right? Internal linking is something that we don't talk enough about, right? Really helping Google, and as well as people, navigate through our site and understand the context of our site through internal links, and taking a page that's maybe ranked really well and linking into a new page that has a similar topic, right? That way to kind of pass that through. And so I think there's a lot there. I think user experience, we talk a lot about page speed, and I think that's important competitively, right? But I think it's over. I think we aren't thinking enough about the actual conversion, right? In that. So when we talk about behavior, it's like, yes, page speed is important if you're competing against really fast other sites that are very, very fast. But if you're in a very small market or other sites that are very, very slow, it's not a huge deal. And through my lens. But once you get somebody to the site, you have three jobs: engage, inform, convert, right? So, are you actually making sure you're sending them to the, if you're getting a lot of traffic from mobile, is your site mobile responsive, right? Is it mobile first, even, whatever it would be, like restaurants, you really need to be thinking about that. And then what's the call to action, am I conveying information, and what's the call to action am I using? So I know we don't think about calls to action as SEO, but for me, it's like, a major piece is not just getting the traffic, but then converting that traffic. And I think it kind of goes on and on. There's a lot of link building factors, and a lot of people say, well, link building is, we don't do that anymore. It's not necessary. Just got to build content. And while that's true for small blogs, right, or very niche sites, I think that having authority building, I guess practices makes a lot of sense, and kind of thinking again just holistically. So I don't know. I guess there's a lot there. I would just say whatever it is that you, I guess my challenge would be this: whatever it is that you do as an SEO, don't do it for a month, right?
Yeah.
Just figure out something else to do that month. Whatever it is that you always write, just don't do content for a month, and start opening that world. Do something else, right? And then you get into maybe technical. Okay, the next month, don't do technical. What else are you gonna come? It's just kind of challenge yourself to think outside the box and figure out, okay, what's that muscle that's the weakest, and see how I can work on that.
I think this is a great advice, because for so many cases, we just content creators just, content, and then just, push it to the social media. And then you say, okay, now this content is done, then I'm out of this area. But, right now, actually, you just touched the point, which is my weakest part, and reminded me, now you need to stop, and you need to think and work on internal linking of your website, because when you're creating content and then trying to push it on the social media, you did not think about that. You just want to do and finish your content, and it could be, it is of course very nice, but as you say, every month you should do different thing in order to keep up with the competition and improving your website, actually. So these are really, really good advices. Thank you. Just reminding me. What are your thoughts on natural language processing?
So I think, I think that's a big area, right? We see a lot with, well, we can just start with maybe how does it impact, search demand, right? When we're, talk to text, sort of, whether it's a Siri or whatever that is, thinking through, if I understand go back to audience, if I understand my audience, right? And I really understand where they're going to be and how they're going to be looking for a solution, and they may not know they need me yet, right? So, what does that look like? Are they on a phone, and are they, driving and needing to ask something? Or are they, busy with stuff, and they're cooking, they just need to hit a button and talk into it? Like, if you ultimately are trying to serve content up that you think there's a user story there where they're going to be using natural search, then I would say, really look into, okay, how does that change things? And how do I get content back in a way that the search engines can say, hey, I can consume this, right? If it's this huge long post, then maybe it's not going to get served up, versus if it has maybe some structured, some schema or some structured markup in there of some sort that says, hey, here's kind of the answer to that. Maybe it's a frequently asked question, Q&A type of thing. So I think that's one piece. I'm thinking also in the video side or an audio side, like, is this being transcribed? Thinking through that, like, can I repurpose that content in some sort of way? There's a lot. I think there's a lot of implications to that, and I think that the overarching simply is understanding how people interact with technology, and what is the environment, what's the user story, like why would they be doing talking into a phone versus typing versus whatever it would be. And so kind of seeing like, how does that ultimately impact what my funnel looks like, or how I serve them ultimately.
Yeah, I think it is all about search intent. In a way, you just try to understand your user, as you say, from where they are coming from, what is their what are your purposes, and what kind of an outcome they are looking for. It's so it just covers all the aspects of technology, all the aspects of the person, of the behavior, of the purpose, and all that stuff comes together, and then it just confined by a natural language processing. This title is very intimidating in a way, but at the same time, it's so human, because what it serves is understand human as a human, like, you and I, or Rob and Josh are just communicating and understanding each other's where they're coming from. Google wants to try to be that person. So, hello, I think I lost you. Hi, Rob. Can you hear me?
I think my cat is messing with the router or something. I don't know what's happening. Seriously, is my cat?
Yeah.
Yes, are we back?
Yeah, we're back. Oh my God. Yeah, so sorry. Oh, yeah. So, what do you think about how startups approach the SEO?
One more time.
What do you think about startups approach the SEO? They try to delay it in so many cases. So what is your advice?
I think as a startup, you should really prioritize SEO in the sense out of the gate, right? Because SEO, again, involves understanding your customer, understanding your brand, developing a content strategy, right? It's like, user experience again, right? So if we understand it as a holistic kind of, umbrella, every startup should really prioritize it. And, a lot of times we think, well, it takes too long to get going. I need, immediate traffic, and that's okay, right? You can have a paid strategy alongside your content strategy. I know when I look at, some of the companies that I'm mentoring, or some of the companies I've launched, like I focus on organic strategy out of the gate, and it has paid huge dividends. I have one e-commerce brand that all I did was organic, and it's done really, really well. Zero paid ever, right? Now, granted, it took 6 months to get it off the ground, truly to get it, but we're at year 5 now, and it's pretty much set and forget, at this point, and it's pretty amazing how, if you take the time, and yes, it may take you 6 months or 3 months to 6 months, or even a year potentially, depends on how tough your space is. But once you have that, like, it's like you're owning real estate, and so I think what's like, don't rent, own. And so that's kind of how I look at that. So ultimately though, I think, as a startup, it is so important to understand what the bigger picture looks like. It's so important to go through the different steps, not thinking of SEO as something you're going to do later, but really thinking about, how does SEO fall into an overall communication strategy, right? And I think when you do the work to understand, like you mentioned, search intent, right? You're going to understand your audience better. And when you're doing the keyword research, you're going to understand what words they're using, and maybe roll that in your marketing copy, right? You're going to understand what words stick out, what trends stick out, and say, okay, clearly we need to, maybe factor this in. This is something this is a pain point to our audience. So there's, I could go on this question forever, but I think the short on that one is it's incredibly important, especially for startups, because you get into, more mature companies, and it's interesting for me how, like, I've worked on, sites that had like, 3 million URLs, and, at that point, like SEO is incredibly important because it makes a huge amount of their revenue, but you're not really doing much anymore, right? It's mostly just technical SEO at that point, and some, content, but, as a startup, like, hitting all the bases and really understanding all the pieces is, I would say is critical to a long-term success. And so.
Exactly. I cannot agree more. Since there's expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. This is it. This is a very important concept in a way, because it just confines all the things that is important for you as a startup. You are just coming from nowhere, and you need to identify yourself. Even if you are going to, as a person to person, when you are in a newbie in a new social environment, you just go there and try to explain yourself and try to show that you are a real person, a trustworthy person, and so and so. So it's exactly the same, especially with the startups. They just need to prove themselves that they are bringing a solution which is worthwhile for consumers to buy or to follow. But if you don't create that kind of trustworthiness, credibility, then even though you run your ads, they will just pay you as long as you pay for the ads. Once you stop, and when you don't have any eat, just you are in the middle of nowhere. So that's a really big pain point, but that's the hardest things for startups to understand, I guess.
Yeah. It feels like an extra duty. They're saying, oh, I don't have time for this. We have so many other things we're doing. But I would say when we really think about how it rolls into everything that they should be doing, right? Understanding their audience, building a brand, developing a clear communication strategy, user experience. Those are all things that you've got to be focused on as a startup anyway. And then just understanding that, oh, that's SEO, right?
Yeah.
Great. So you're actually doing SEO by doing best practices to many instances with some, more nuances, but you get the idea.
Exactly. So Rob, thank you so much for today's discussion. You give us lots of good points to think about and just change our ways to work through SEO. And I enjoy it so much, and I learned a lot too. And I'm so happy to be included in your Clubhouse room, SEO fundamentals, and any other marketing clubs rooms, because they were all amazing conversations and fascinating people, excellent knowledge. So it's so helpful for everybody, and I really want everybody to discover you. So how can they discover you or follow you?
Sure. So I have a Facebook group. I think it's called Mind Meld with Rob, is the Facebook's group / Mind Meld with Rob. It's kind of a little private thing. I've got, just some people on there, just my mentees, but it's free to anyone that wants to go into it. And anytime I create new content, I'll post this video there. Anytime I'm creating something, I'll post it there. I have my mentee courseware, my student courseware. So that takes through all the ABCs of marketing, as well as soft skills. What I think, things like what I call my core skills. So it's like pattern, courses on pattern matching and all of this. It's all free content. I believe you can go to bit.ly/Rob-introduction, I believe it is, bit.ly/Rob-introduction, -Rob, and or bit.ly/Rob-introduction, I think it is, or just find me on LinkedIn as Bertholf, or just rob@bertholf.com. I love sharing. I love, I think for me it's about kind of it took a lot to learn about this stuff in a lot of years, and I've always kind of wanted it to be more condensed. And so I kind of like, my whole thing is trying to be that person that I didn't have maybe, 20 something years ago. So, or 5 years ago, whatever. So, I just, anybody that wants to reach out, I definitely would love to, share whatever I can. So
yeah, thank you so much. I will also share all those resources on my blog post and also YouTube channel. But what you have done is amazing, and keep up the good work, because we need people like you. People really learn from experts, and in an authentic way. And I love your guides, and because I'm also going out, just going to the jungle and find, oh my God, I didn't know this. Still, there's always something for me out there. So I strongly advise people to go and to discover and learn more and more from your resources.
And thank you for what you're always doing every week in the Clubhouse rooms and bringing knowledge and contributions there, and for the recaps you're doing on Firuze.blog, and for this channel. So I just want to appreciate, thank you and appreciate all that you're doing for the SEO space.
Thank you so much, Rob. Hope to see you soon. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.